Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your warm welcome. I'm pleased to be here this morning. Does that sound all right, or is it too much echo? It's all right? One of the places that my wife would have us live if it weren't in San Diego is... Can you hear me all right? Sounds a little odd. Would be Colorado Springs. She really loves it here, and I love it here, but we're not moving here like everybody else in California, so don't worry about it. I just want you to know we appreciate it. But one of my law partners, who is an Air Force Academy graduate, I was talking to him yesterday before I left to come out here. And he said, "Oh, you're going to Colorado Springs." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You taking a jacket?" And I said, "It's May. Why would I need a jacket?" So, of course, I didn't. And what's it going to snow or something? I mean, come on. As Trevor said, I do write novels, and that's kind of what I'm most known for these days. I've written 6 novels. I took a brief period off of writing, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And now I'm starting again and have almost finished my next novel, which I have to turn in to St. Martin's in September, and it'll come out next year. But a lot of people wonder, well, what is this writing thing about? How do you do this? How do you get started? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. And then I want to tell you about a couple of major, substantial, significant prayers in my life, since this is a prayer breakfast and not a writing breakfast. But the inside of the writing world is kind of interesting. For those of you who have ever tried to do any substantial writing or tried to get published, you've probably heard that it's extremely difficult to get published, and that's a true statement. My wife encouraged me to write fiction when I was in the process of writing editorials for the San Diego Union. I decided to do that after I'd served in the Pacific Intelligence Center during the first Iraq War. I thought that the press wasn't quite getting the inside part of the war right. And so I started writing newspaper editorials on a monthly basis for the San Diego Union. But one night I was sitting there talking to my wife about how I just didn't really find it that gratifying, that I needed to write something more substantial. And she said, "Well, you should start writing fiction." When she suggested that, we had 5 children under the age of 10. So I could barely hear her at the other end of the table because of all the food fights, and screaming and crying. But I figure after 2 kids, it's all zone defense anyway. So you can play man-to-man up to 2, but after that, it's strictly zone. So I figured, well, what the heck? And I said, you may be creating a monster here, because if I decide to do something, I usually go at it pretty hard. And she said, "That's all right. Go for it. I've always known that's what you were going to do." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. When were you going to tell me that?" And so I decided to do it. Little did I know what I was undertaking. I spent basically 5 years in obscurity and rejection trying to write novels. I wrote a novel about World War II and did all kinds of research on it, including going to the U.S. archives and researching the U.S. carrier Enterprise during Pearl Harbor. Found out some great and interesting stuff and wrote this book and sent it off and got rejected and started writing the sequel. And I said, "Whoa, wait a second. What are the odds of them wanting a sequel to a book they didn't want in the first place?" I was all over that. And so then I wrote another book, and that got rejected. And then I wrote another book, and I was in the middle of the rejection process. I'd actually gotten it down to quite a science at that point, this rejection process. I charted who I was sending it to and when it was coming back and the like. And I decided that maybe the way to do it was to go ahead and write the rejection letters myself and include them with the manuscript. That way, all they'd have to do is sign them and send it back. It'd be much quicker than waiting for them to get around to drafting their own rejection letters. But I finally, on the last book that I was going to write after 5 years, I told my wife, I said, I'd be better off if I just went down to the 7-Eleven and worked at an hourly rate and bought lottery tickets. We'd probably have more to show for it than what I've got to show for it right now. She said, "No, just keep going." I said, "All right." So I narrowed it down to these 21 literary agents that I thought would be just the right people to get me through this process. And so after I got 20 of the 21 expected rejection letters, I had the chart. See, I had who I sent it to and when the rejection letter came back. And there was one hole in the chart, which was from this one particular agent. And finally, I got the manuscript back. They usually send it back. They don't want it like soiling their office. So they send it back to you so that you can trash it. And so I was getting this rejection letter back. And I opened it up, I said, great, the final rejection of the last novel. Am I going to keep going? I probably wouldn't. And I opened it, and it was addressed to somebody else. Dear Mr. Smith, in New Jersey, we hate your book, leave us alone. And so I was annoyed by this time, because I had a process here. And so I called the literary agent, and I said, this woman's name was on it. Her name was Amy Williams. I asked for Amy Williams, and I said, is Amy there? And they said, no, she's not here. And I said, well, I need to talk to her. Well, why? I said, because I got a rejection letter, but it's not mine, and I want my rejection letter. All right? I've got a system, and once I get mine, I can check it off. I can't check it off for some guy from New Jersey. That doesn't work at all. He said, what? What are you talking about? And so I told him, and he went, oh, no, that's a mistake. Send that back. I said, well, could you send me my rejection letter? He said, no, we haven't decided to reject yours yet. I said, okay, well, let me know when you do. And so, sure enough, about 2 weeks later, that agent called me, and he said, are you represented yet? And I said, no. And he said, all right, let's do this. And a week later, I had book offers from the 4 largest publishers in the country and a movie deal with Jerry Bruckheimer and the Disney Corporation. So sometimes things just turn on a dime, and off we went. And so from that point on, I wrote 6 novels, one every year, while practicing law and raising my 5 kids who were at that point, 5 to whatever. And so I went on practicing law and kept on until about 2001. And it was really funny because I would routinely hear from people. They'd say, oh, you were in the Navy and you've got great kids and they all look semi-normal and you write books and you practice law. Oh, gosh, you've got it all. And people would literally say to me to my face, I wish I had your life. I wish I were you. Yeah, well, be careful what you wish for. And let me tell you something that's happened since then. In December of 2001, I was up in Tahoe, California. My wife's parents live just southeast of Tahoe in the foothills called the Gold Country of California. And they live about an hour away from an absolutely wonderful ski resort called Kirkwood, which rivals many in Colorado for getting the most snow in any given year. They're always in the running for which ski resort has the most snowfall in a given year. Kirkwood is one of them. And it's kind of an obscure place that not too many people know about. But it's a great place. And we were up there skiing with our family. We took the kids up there. We'd stay with the grandparents and drive to Kirkwood and go skiing. Well, while we were up there, I just started feeling horrible. I had this just horrible earache, and I was feeling bad, and I felt run down. It was just not good. And so we came back down, and it just didn't get any worse. It didn't get any better. It just continued to get worse. And so I told my wife, you know what? We just need to head home. I just feel so bad. So we drove down to San Diego, to Escondido, which is where we actually live in northern San Diego County. And I said, I got to see my doctor. This is just not going right. There's something wrong. So I went to him and got a physical. And when I went to him and got my blood work back, he said, you've got bone marrow cancer and your kidneys just failed. He said, which hospital would you like to check into? I said, you're serious? And he said, yeah, I'm dead serious. I said, well, Pomerado Hospital. So I walked into the ICU of Pomerado Hospital in San Diego, went from skiing in Lake Tahoe to the ICU in 3 days. And I was 48 years old. And I said to myself, wait a second. I'm not 98. This is supposed to happen when you're 98. We all know, right? We all know this is a truth. You live till you're 98. Then you get tired and you die. Right? I checked my calendar. I still was not 98. I said, there's been a miscalculation here by somebody. But I was just leveled, just gutted by this news. At that time, my kids were between 10 and 18. And so I went into the ICU, and they started digging holes in my chest for catheters, and they put me on kidney dialysis, which I had to do every day. I had to do pheresis, where they take your blood out and pull the protein out and put it back in every day. I had to go right on chemotherapy. And then I had a bone marrow biopsy, which for those of you who are looking for fun things to do, that would be on the not-to-do list.